Hello everybody and welcome to a video course on learning to automate Excel with macros. And of course with Excel, when we're talking about macros, we're talking about the Visual Basic for Applications language, which is basically Visual Basic that's designed to be able to use and call upon the great power of Excel instead of having to program everything from scratch. And so I want you to understand that this is not a course designed to teach you how to use Excel itself. So if you don't know how to insert formulas or what all the cells mean and how to change and do things in Excel, at least minimal things in Excel, this course is not for you. This is designed for people who basically want to automate things that they normally do in Excel in order to make repetitive jobs less tedious, more accurate, and oftentimes a lot more fun. And sometimes providing information that's really difficult to provide with just Excel operating by itself. And so there are a couple of things that we need to do in order to make Excel useful for this macro background that's going to run various applications as time goes on. And so there's some things that we need to make sure are working within Excel that will help with running macros. And the first is there's a menu item missing in the standard Excel deployment that we need to make sure is there. I'm going to show you how to do that in real second. It's real easy. But before I do that, I want to talk about a couple reasons why you might want to learn how to program Excel with macros instead of just doing everything manually. And so it may be, for example, as this example goes back to many years ago when I was teaching statistics on a Friday night class at Kent State University in Northern Ohio. And at that time in Akron, you had research centers for Goodrich, Goodyear, Firestone, General Tire, all in the Akron area. And so what I did, I combined all those into one name, and I called it the Goodstone Tire and Chemical Company. That's kind of got one part of one feature of all four of the major tire companies at the time. And so, but there, this is an example of what might be called defect statistics. And there may be things that people want to do besides just total the number of defects and take averages. There might be, for example, things that someone might want to do to look at various different types of statistics. And of course, these are just simple statistics. And all these things, if you look at them, you'll see there's an Excel formula here that can do them. The problem is that when you set up something like this as an Excel formula, when you want to add and subtract columns or data or change things, a lot of times you got to go back in and reprogram these things. And it's very easy for someone who understands how to use macro programming to be able to set up something so it automatically calculates the rows and the columns and can change all these things automatically. And that's a simple example, but when you're doing repetitive things, it can be really just absolutely kill you brain wise because it takes so long sometimes to update all these things manually. If we look at a different spreadsheet, it might also be something where you're running a small business or even for a larger business and you want to be able to display statistics, and here's some sales statistics. Now these are all made up numbers, but this was a real company that I ran for 20 some years, and my sons and I, and it was a lot of fun, and until I got really a major case of arthritis, in which case it wasn't so fun anymore. But anyway, so for example, you can click, and so you can click on these various things and have a graph automatically update. You could add, for example, if instead of you wanted to just look at all these sales, these various categories across for years, you could set it up so that you clicked on this and you got the sales for all the different categories for the same year. So maybe you have a bar graph or something. So, but this is again an example of something that you'll learn how to do in this course. Here's one that's rather interesting. One of the things that, as powerful as Excel is, they really don't have an easy way built into Excel itself to calculate, and if you're not a technical person, I apologize, but polynomials. Now, a polynomial can be a straight line with just basically a slope and an interface, which is used a lot in business projections and whatnot. But as you get into other fields, you may need a higher order polynomial. So here's an example of one that where basically these various different files are all different calibration curves for an instrument, and over time that calibration changes, and here's the polynomial coefficients that are calculated for that. But at times it may be that you want to have a your own menu item up here, and you'll notice there's a menu item that you don't have in yours called GPC Calc. And so I've got a little thing in here. So if I click on this, here's a table that where people can enter their calibration data. You don't have to know what any of this stuff means. It's just a set of data that we're going to plot and calculate the coefficients of this line for. And so, for example, if I want it to be a second order polynomial, I can hit this and calculate it, and you'll see if I move this over here out of the way that here's a second order polynomial fit. And if you look at this, you'll see that the data has kind of a couple slopes in it, and this polynomial is just a bent line. And for example, here's a straight line. A polynomial of 1 is a straight line, and you can see now it's just a straight line going through that data. And so it's set up so that if you wanted to, for example, let's go back down to the first order, calculate that. Now, if I wanted to save that data once it's calculated, it's set up so I save the calibration, and it comes over, and here's that calibration data set, inserts it at the very top, which is probably the one that's of most interest to someone. This is actually a macro code. Now, when you program in Excel, you don't get line numbers. You have in your macro area where you're going to actually write all this code or learn to write it. There's all kinds of colors that you can associate with these various things. But unfortunately, when you export that data, copy and paste it into an Excel spreadsheet or anywhere else, a Word document, there's no colors associated with it. So I didn't like that. So what I did was I wrote a little macro, and this is actually the macro that allows me to color code this by running the macro, so that it looks very similar to what I see in the macro code, and it puts line numbers in, which again you don't get in your programming environment. And so what I've done here is I've created a new menu item called code document, and if I just simply hit document code, it's going to go through and it's going to color. Now hopefully you see on the video that these lines, option and public and the constant lines, they're all different color codes. The red ones are comments that define what's going on with the code. And and I wrote another little macro because since I do this all the time for people, I want to be able to just leave that there and clear it, clearing all the data out of there. So if I do that, it resets everything to black like it was. And if I hit this button, clear the columns, everything is gone. Now I can go out and copy something and paste some new stuff in. So then here's another one just that was done later on in the course, and you'll get this just for the fun of it. Here's an example of an application. This is all within Excel. I can select a file and go highlight as many of the pictures that I want to view, and then if I want, then I have a menu here, and I can pick any one of these that I want. This is a picture of my son many years ago when he was very, very young. And my boys always like to run around naked, and I used to take pictures and say, if you guys don't quit doing that, someday you're going to live to regret it. And guess what? They now live to regret it. So this is my middle son, Joshua, who now has thousands of people that have seen this picture now to program. So with that, let's go back to this particular one. And what we want to do is show you that there's a tab up here that's useful for macro programming. It's called Developer. It's not in most installations when it's first installed. So there's two ways that you can make that tab materialize, and one of them is right here. If you just come up here somewhere in a blank area of your menu and right click on your mouse and then come down here to customize the ribbon, it'll open it up, and you'll see here's all the main tabs that are in Excel, and one of them called developers turned off. So all you gotta do is click that and turn it on, and boom, now we've got the developer tab. And when you go to the developer tab, if you click on it, you'll see all kinds of things that are useful for the macro programming environment, and we'll learn to use a lot of these things as time goes on. Now there's another way that you can get this developer tab to appear if it's not at the top of your menu, and that is to go to File and go to Options, and again do Customize Ribbon, and there it is then, so you can check it if it's not checked, and it'll be there.